Questioners at part 2 stand part. Call Maggie Berry.
Thank you, Mr Chair. If you thought that the first part and the preamble were fascinating, I'm delighted to be able to take a lengthy call now, analysing clauses 5, 6, 7 and 8, and then the exciting culmination, which is clause 9. There were no changes exactly recommended to those, but the process of how that conclusion was arrived at is indeed fascinating. I am, of course, hoping that the sponsoring member, Damien O'Connor, will be able to shine a little light on how the community have responded to the progress of his members' bill so far. But I see he's deeply engaged in conversation, but perhaps at a later moment he might be able to elucidate and come to it. I could ask him again. It's really to, now that you're paying attention, to talk about the community and how it feels about this validation and whether it will, in fact, smooth over some of the hurt feelings and problems that have happened. So when we look at clauses 5, 6, 7 and 8, they're specifically concerned with the validation of the specified rates, the validation of the penalties, the payment of specified rates which have been declared lawful, and then clause 8 itself, recovery of unpaid specified rates or penalties declared lawful. Now, a number of submitters opposed clauses 6 to 8 in relation to the penalties in particular. One submitter's view, which was particularly interesting, was that the Council should be limited to being able to collect only the base rate, but not the penalties for late payment on the base amount. Now, the ratepayers, this is the logic around it, the ratepayers who had delayed paying the rates because they were invalid should not be penalised. This was considered unjustified and would mean that the Council would then be benefiting from its own errors, which is, of course, something that we need to take into account. After all, as every good parent knows, you can't reward bad behaviour, and by benefiting from its own errors, then the Council would indeed be in a difficult situation. Well, in fact, they'd be in a good situation, but it would send a very bad signal to other councils. One submitter on those clauses 5 through till 7 suggested that penalties should only apply to amounts that remain unpaid after some specified period after the Act comes into force. So you'll appreciate, Mr Chair, that there were a number of submitters who'd given this a great deal of thought and time and energy. The officials, for their part, also devoted a lot of time and energy to this, and as I said in my earlier call on the preamble, it is a shame that something like this has got to the stage that it has and has wasted so much of the House's time and the taxpayers' money. But there it is. That's the nature of democracy, and we know that Labor's short concentration span on the whole can't really tolerate it. But we will go through it. Yes, they find it boring, and that is a very, very telling observation. So I think that they seem to find most things boring, which is probably why the local government reforms will go through, and they will go through without too much in the way of rigorous opposition, because they just can't marshal the intellectual rigour to be able to counter any of the excellent arguments that we put forward. So there you go. They are indeed wallowing in their short concentration spans and their problematic moments. I would like to go now to the Department's recommendations on the clauses. They did consider them to be appropriate for purpose, and the Department recommended no changes to clauses 5 and 8. Now, when we come to clause 9, Mr Chair, and I know you'll be interested in this because it is really, it makes explicit the nub of the problem, which is the 2006-2007 Liger Bay and Tata Beach stormwater rates. It made them valid and declared that any lawful, and declared them lawful despite the category of rateable land not being identified in that earlier impact statement. You know, floods occur occasionally in this area, and that was in detail explained to us by a couple of submitters, in particular Mr Schmucki, who had gone to a lot of trouble, had laminated several large photographs, and had, as I said in my earlier call and as others have referred to, just taken it that step further. 9 submitters had opposed the validation of that Liger Bay and Tata Beach stormwater rates. They were very much opposed to the initial levying, Mr Chair, of the stormwater rates on the grounds that no stormwater drainage services were provided by the Council and that there was no need for them. Therefore, why should they pay for them? Further, there was no initial consultation on the inclusion of Liger Bay, so that those ratepayers felt themselves disenfranchised, not involved in the process, and were obviously therefore very unhappy at what they were expected to pay. Submitters also opposed the validation of the invalid stormwater rates on the basis of the Ombudsman's opinion, that was back in 2009, which supported the position that levying a stormwater rate for Tata Beach was based wholly or partly on the mistake of law and fact. And really, was that natural justice? No, it was not. So the officials had commented at length. Mr.
The Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I thought I'd just take the opportunity to answer a couple of questions that have been asked. The one of accountability for mistakes, whether that has run far and wide, I can say that there are a number of councillors who lost their position.